Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. A decade of love wiped out in an instant. We were all celebrating a friend's baby's full moon, having a blast amidst the good vibes. Everyone started poking fun at me and Casey. When are you two tying the knot? I pulled out a bunch of wedding invites and handed them out with a grin. Dates locked in. Everyone come through and celebrate with us. For a split second, everyone was taken aback. Then the teasing kicked back in. You guys have been together for 10 years, finally making it official, huh? It wasn't smooth sailing. Out of nowhere, Casey's face changed, and she dumped a glass of cold water on my head. Seriously, Jamie? Using these tricks to push for marriage? I pointed to the name on the invite, my tone icy. Hey Casey, check this out. Is the bride's name yours? She froze, eyes wide as she stared at the wedding photo on the invite. It was clear the bride wasn't her. Everyone else caught on and started whispering. The bride's name was Zoe, not Casey. I knew something was off about that wedding pic. Turns out it had nothing to do with Casey. Flustered and pissed, Casey tried to snatch the invite from my hand, but I was ready and dodged her move. She missed and bumped into the table, looking even more disheveled and humiliated. Before, I might have felt bad for her, but now I just found it funny. Jamie, you hired someone to embarrass me just to force a marriage. I don't care. You're just fooling yourself. Her tone was still full of attitude, not even looking at me while she spoke. The others started seeing me in a new light. The class monitor stepped in to calm things down. Guys, it's a happy day. Don't go overboard. You two have been together so long, you should get each other. Jamie, even if you're rushing, don't joke about marriage. And Casey, Jamie wanting to marry you is cool. You two should talk it out without being mean. Casey glared at me coldly. You must have teamed up with our classmates. Isn't this just to force me into marrying you in front of everyone? Guess what? I'm not going to play along. I won't let someone like you win. Everyone looked confused, not realizing they were getting dragged into our forced marriage drama. I quickly addressed the group. I would never joke about something as serious as marriage. Then I turned to Casey. Hey Casey, remember we broke up 6 months ago? Why would I try to marry you now? Forgot what happened half a year back. You seriously think I'd forgive you after such a huge mistake? Most classmates knew about our breakup. Their looks towards me softened a bit. Casey's expression cracked. Are you really ending things? I scoffed. What do you think? I'd never joke about something like this. 6 months ago, I went to a friend's wedding. Casey said she couldn't make it, so I went solo. After the party, I left the hotel. As I was exiting the elevator, I saw Casey with another guy. A sharp-eyed friend pointed it out. Jamie, isn't that Casey? I shook my head. No way. She's at home getting me ready for a bath. My friends laughed, saying how lucky I was. Later, I quietly I followed Casey and saw her heading into a hotel room with the guy. Before they could close the door, they were already getting cozy. The guy laughed and said, "Aren't you scared your boyfriend will find out?" Casey smirked and replied, "So what if he does? Would he dare leave me?" The guy teased, "Jamie, you're so lame." I love it, but be careful. Casey's hand slid down the guy's chest. Even if he finds out, I'll just explain a bit. He'll forgive me. Don't worry, just take care of me. I couldn't take it anymore and kicked the door open. Casey, we're done. With that, I turned and left. I thought Casey would at least pretend to chase me down and explain. But all I heard were snarky comments behind me. Casey, aren't you going to chase after your boyfriend? He's too weak for you to even bother. If he leaves, don't blame me. Don't worry, he'll come crawling back. It gave me chills, like being stuck in a freezing cellar. 10 years of love trampled like this. Time to end this toxic relationship. Casey's voice echoed again. Jamie, are you really breaking up with me? Are you out of your mind? I'm just playing around with others. In the end, I'll still be with you. A boring guy like you who won't leave me. I'll give you a chance. Apologize. Her face stayed as arrogant as ever, but her voice had a panic undertone. Before, I might have taken her up on that, but now I wasn't about to love so meekly. I sneered. Apologize? Casey, are you dreaming? I'm busy and don't have time for your games. I kicked her and walked away, ignoring her embarrassed look. I've been single for half a year now. My current fiancé is Zoe, and she has nothing to do with Casey. I cleared things up with my classmates to prevent further misunderstandings. Everyone nodded in understanding, except Casey, who kept repeating her old lines. Jamie, can you stop this nonsense? This cat and mouse game is so low-key, it's draining me. Can you stop pretending and let's just live a good life together? I laughed sarcastically. Her idea of a good life was like before. Me working hard to support her, coming home to obey her every whim, and enduring her constant disdain like a servant to a princess. She threw tantrums over the smallest things. Before dating Zoe, I naively thought this was normal in love, but with Zoe, I realized love is about mutual respect and care. Casey, on the other hand, would rather respect strangers than me, her boyfriend of 10 years. She even blatantly cheated right in front of me. After that incident, I moved out of Casey's place and into my new home. Over the 10 years, from our youth to our late 20s, I went from nothing to a moderately successful entrepreneur. The more I achieved, the more our relationship deteriorated. I had no regrets. I gave it my all, only for it to end like this. In the half year since breaking up, Casey never reached out. She stayed proud, waiting for me to admit my fault. Later, her friends kept calling, saying Casey was around, and inviting me to hang out. I played dumb and refused, making it clear I wasn't interested. Casey, we've broken up. I'm not playing games. I have a fiancé with whom I bid farewell to my classmates, ready to be with Zoe. Just then Zoe appeared, her face bright and cheerful. Jamie, I finished work early and came to pick you up. You've always picked me up. It's time I repay you. Her words, like a gentle breeze, touched my heart. I couldn't help but hold her hand. Sure, I said, introducing her to everyone. This is my fiancé, Zoe. Zoe greeted my classmates politely, and they quickly warmed up to her. Only Casey glared at Zoe with jealous rage. Zoe, how dare you seduce my boyfriend? We've been together for 10 years, and you think you can just step in? You're nothing but a shameless homewrecker. She lunged forward, trying to grab Zoe's hair. I pushed her away, shielding Zoe. Crazy woman. What right do you have to slander my love? Casey burst into tears. Jamie, how can you treat me like this? Don't forget you swore to protect and love me for life. I didn't have time for her. My focus was on Zoe. Zoe's face went pale, her body trembling. I picked her up and walked away. Casey blocked my path, continuing her antics. Jamie, explain yourself. What do you mean by this? Are you trying to provoke me with Zoe? Think I don't have other men? She deliberately picked up her phone and dialed someone. Hey bro, come pick me up at the hotel. She thought this would get to me, but I was only concerned about Zoe. I looked at Casey coldly, my tone devoid of warmth. I've made it clear we have nothing to do with each other anymore. Zoe is my love. Step aside. Casey stared at me, tears streaming down her face. I ignored her and left with Zoe. Zoe wasn't feeling well, so we canceled our dinner plans. I put her in the car, sitting her in the passenger seat. My tone was anxious. What's wrong? If you're not feeling well, I'll take you to the hospital. Zoe clung to me, crying softly. Jamie, I'm not the person Casey says I am. I decided to be with you after you two broke up. I didn't intentionally seduce you, nor do I want to be the other woman. I stroked her head, comforting her with concern. I know who you really are. We've known each other for years. How could I be swayed by her words? With my comfort, Zoe slowly calmed down. I took her back home, where we made dinner together. Usually she cooked, and I'd come home to a delicious meal. Tonight, since I was home early, I showed off my cooking skills. Zoe helped me and looked at me with admiration. Jamie, I didn't know you were so good at cooking. What's the big deal? I've been cooking since I was 16. As I boasted about my culinary skills, Zoe suddenly hugged me from behind, her voice filled with heartache. Jamie, let me handle these things from now on. You've worked hard balancing work and chores. Hearing this, my eyes welled up. For 10 years, I had worked tirelessly to support Casey, cooking 3 meals a day for her. But she never cared or appreciated me. Instead, she criticized me daily. As I reminisced about the past, Casey called. Tomorrow is my mom's death anniversary. You better kneel in front of her. I grave and beg for her forgiveness. My face went pale every time. Casey used her mother to threaten me. I gave in. This time was no different. After hanging up, I lost my appetite. Zoe looked at me cautiously, hesitating before speaking. Jamie, did something happen? Is it related to Casey? I nodded. It is, but don't worry, I'll handle it soon. To avoid worrying Zoe, I forced myself to eat a few bites of food. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Feeling sorry for me, Zoe started singing a lullaby. At first, I wanted to laugh. After all, I'm not a kid who needs soothing. But as she gently patted my back and hummed a soothing tune, my worries slowly faded. I slept well for the rest of the night. The next morning, Zoe had already left for work. She had prepared breakfast and left it in a warming tray for me, along with a note reminding me to eat well and rest. Her tenderness touched my heart deeply, but today was Casey's mother's death anniversary, so I had no appetite. I didn't go to the office all day. Fortunately, the company ran smoothly without me. Casey called countless times, but I didn't answer. In the afternoon, I finally left home. As usual, I bought some offerings and went to Casey's mother's grave to pay my respects. Casey was already there waiting for me. A flash of joy crossed her eyes, but was quickly replaced by arrogance and disdain. Jamie, do you think you deserve my mother? My mom took you and worked hard to raise you, and died early because of you. And how do you repay her? By being with another woman? Have you forgotten you promised her on her deathbed to take care of me for life? I ignored Casey and quietly placed the offerings. I lit incense and candles for the old lady, showing my respect and gratitude. It had nothing to do with Casey. When I was 10, my parents died in a car accident. None of my relatives wanted to take me in. I thought about ending it all until kind-hearted Aunt Emma took me in. From then on, I treated her like a mother. Sadly, the good times didn't last. When I was 16, Aunt Emma passed away from illness. Before she died, she asked me to take care of Casey until she grew up. I tearfully agreed, letting Aunt Emma go in peace. Casey, a year younger than me, liked to follow me everywhere, both at school and home. I took special care of her, loving her like a sister. However, 2 years after Aunt Emma's death, Casey asked to date me out of gratitude. I agreed. From then on, Casey enjoyed my support. Whenever she did something excessive, I forgave her for Aunt Emma's sake. After all, she was also a poor soul, having lost her father young and raised by Aunt Emma alone. After Aunt Emma's death, I was her only family, but my love and indulgence didn't earn her understanding. She became more and more unreasonable, pushing my limits until I couldn't take it anymore. If Aunt Emma could see us from the afterlife, she would surely be disappointed by our relationship. Thinking about it, I knelt again before the old lady. Auntie, I believe I fulfilled what you entrusted to me. From now on, Casey will have to rely on herself, but after I get married, I'll still visit you often. Standing up, I was ready to leave the cemetery when Casey angrily grabbed my arm. Do you think you can just say a few words and sneak away? I brought you here to repent, not to escape responsibility. What do you mean she has to rely on herself? Are you really going to abandon me? Kneel down. I'll give you a chance to rephrase. Casey pulled at me, trying to force me to kneel in front of the grave again. In the past, during our arguments, she always used this trick to punish me. Back then, I cared about her and was willing to comply. But now how could I still cooperate? Let go. Stop pulling and tugging at me. I pushed her away forcefully, and she fell hard on her backside. She looked at me in disbelief, and realizing I had pushed her, started wailing and shouting. Jamie, how dare you push me? You're bullying me in front of my mother's grave, you bastard. Has your conscience been eaten by a dog? If I had known you were this heartless, I would never have asked Aunt Emma to take you in, ungrateful wretch. I'll expose your despicable actions online. She took out her phone and started a live stream. I grabbed the phone from her and smashed it on the ground. Casey, wake up. From the start, I owed you nothing, only Aunt Emma did. She took me in despite your objections. During those 5 years she was alive, I did my best to take care of her. In contrast, what did you, her biological daughter, do for her besides causing trouble outside and upsetting her at home? What did you do? I pointed at Casey, growing more furious. If Casey had been more sensible back then, Aunt Emma wouldn't have been so worried and might not have died so early. Casey listened in stunned silence, never expecting me to be so merciless. After I touched her sore spot, she became exceptionally angry. Jamie, you're a beast. Your words aren't even human. It was you who moved into my home and took my mother's love, making me rebellious. You killed my mother. You ruined me. I became like this because of you. Don't you have any responsibility? You must treat me well for the rest of your life, or I'll never forgive you. With that, Casey picked up her phone from the ground and left with a twisted expression. I couldn't care about her anymore and silently left the cemetery. Looking back, I saw Zoe standing behind me. She ran to me, crying and hugging me. Jamie, you've had it so tough. My heart aches for you, she cried while softly comforting me. I felt warmth in my heart and hugged her tightly. What are you doing here? Did you hear everything just now? Zoe nodded, wiping her tears with her sleeve. You were unhappy last night, and I was worried about you. Today, I left work early and came to your place, but you weren't there. I remembered today was Aunt Emma's death anniversary, so I guessed you'd be here and came looking. I was afraid Casey would make things harder for you if she saw me, so I hid behind a tree. You won't blame me for taking matters into my own hands, will you? Oh, my own hands and eavesdropping on your conversation, Will. You, Zoe, looked up at me, worry etched on her face. I held her hand as we walked out, giving her a light squeeze on the palm. Since you're worried about me, I won't hold it against you, but you can't do something so dangerous behind my back again. The cemetery is deserted, and it's getting late. It's not safe for you to come here alone. Hearing this, Zoe was delighted. She stood on tiptoe and gently kissed my cheek, then shyly stepped back. Jamie, are you worried about me? Did I hear that right? I kissed her back and ruffled her hair affectionately. Of course I'm worried about you, silly. You're my fiancé now. Zoe leaned against me, her voice tender. Jamie, with your love, I'm so happy. As we walked out of the cemetery, a flash of light suddenly shone in front of us. Casey stood there holding her phone. She glared at us with disgust and spoke angrily. How dare you flaunt your love in front of my mother's grave? Just wait. I'll expose your dirty secrets. If you know what's good for you, you'll break up immediately and stop this disgusting act in front of me. Seeing Casey's face, Zoe hid behind me in fear. Jamie, have I caused you trouble? No matter what happens, I don't want to be separated from you. I squeezed her hand tightly, comforting her. It's okay. I won't let anyone separate us. Casey looked at us with contempt and laughed maniacally. You two act like a couple really well. It's truly annoying. If you disgust me, I can disgust you right back. Just wait, Jamie. I'll make you crawl back to me begging for forgiveness. Seeing Casey's deranged expression, I could only shake my head. This woman was getting more outrageous. Given our past, I felt I had to remind her of a few things. Casey, I'll say it again. Zoe and I are truly engaged, and you need to accept that reality. We're together not to spite you or put on a show. Secretly filming us and threatening us is already bad enough. Keep this up and you'll be skating on thin ice legally. If you dare to hurt Zoe, I won't show any mercy. Mentioning my fiancé made Casey give Zoe a jealous look. Vixen, do you think you're worthy of being with my boyfriend? He helped you, and it's understandable you're grateful and playing along, but don't take it too far, or I can't guarantee the bad things from before won't happen again. With that, the madwoman stormed off. Suddenly, Zoe clutched her head in pain and screamed, Why? Why do people treat me like this? What did I do wrong to deserve this punishment from heaven? Sensing something was wrong, I quickly embraced her, offering all kinds of comfort. Zoe, no matter what happened in the past, it's over. I'm here now to protect you. No one will hurt you, rest assured. Whoever has wronged you, as long as I can, I'll make it right. I comforted her softly, wondering what Misty Casey might have done to Zoe in the past. Otherwise, why would Zoe be so afraid every time she saw Casey? Zoe's sudden emotional outburst was clearly triggered by Casey's earlier words. I held my fiancé. I comforted her for half an hour before she finally calmed down. Thank you, Jamie, for staying by my side during my toughest times. Please don't ask me why this happened. I'll tell you later. For now, I don't know how to explain it. Let's go home. Seeing the hope in her eyes, I nodded and drove her home. That night, she tossed and turned, unable to sleep. I mimicked her way of comforting someone, gently patting her back. Then awkwardly I sang a lullaby. Zoe couldn't help but laugh. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at you, but your singing is really terrible," she explained shyly. I was genuinely happy. Making her laugh was worth any embarrassment. "It's okay. Making a beautiful lady laugh is my honor. You can laugh all you want. The more you laugh, the happier I am to sing." With that, I started singing again. Amidst intermittent laughter, Zoe slowly let go of her worries and fell asleep. I thought she would gradually get better and our lives would also improve. However, Casey started bothering us again. She contacted a junior who worked in the media and posted a video of Zoe and me being intimate at the cemetery online. She also fabricated scandalous stories about Zoe. Casey claimed that Zoe had been unruly since childhood, using her looks to seduce men for tuition fees and thus graduating from college. After graduation, she allegedly used her body to get a high position in a big company. Now she was portrayed as a homewrecker, breaking up a 10-year relationship. In the rumors, I was depicted as an ungrateful scoundrel who cheated on his girlfriend. I was accused of beating the daughter of my deceased benefactor and girlfriend in front of the benefactor's grave. After beating her, I supposedly had an affair with the homewrecker at the grave. Seeing such distorted rumors, I immediately informed the company's legal department. The company was preparing to go public, and such scandals were detrimental to its growth. What I hated most was that Zoe got dragged into this mess and had dirt thrown at her because of me. I quickly took Casey and her media junior to court. Moreover, I collaborated with a more powerful media company, turning the tide of public opinion overnight. I cleared up the misunderstandings about Zoe, highlighting her years of excellent academic and professional achievements. I also explained the complicated relationship between Aunt Emma, Casey, and me. Of course, I didn't forget to expose Casey's affair with her junior. This left Casey and her junior disgraced. I heard they now had to wear helmets in public to avoid being pelted with rotten eggs. After dealing with these matters, I planned to take Zoe on a trip to relax. I hope she hadn't seen what was online. Even though I had clarified the rumors and people sympathized with her and admired her strength, malicious words are like nails driven into the skin. Removing them leaves scars. I spared no expense to have people remove the defamatory comments about Zoe online. However, no matter how hard I tried, someone always brought these comments to her attention. One day, when I came home from work, I heard Casey's abusive voice coming from the open door. "Zoe, don't you go online? Don't you know the whole internet learned about your dirty deeds a few days ago?" Furious, I stormed into the house, positioning Zoe behind me, glaring coldly at Casey. "Casey, what are you doing here? You're not welcome. Get out." Casey, acting like she was invincible, plopped herself down on the sofa. Jamie, who would have thought you had such skills? So this is the new house you bought? Your house is my house. What right does this Zoe have to steal it? A cuckoo in a magpie's nest. It's Zoe who should leave. Now everyone online knows she's a..." As Casey spoke, she cast a venomous look at Zoe. "You filthy woman. How can you still live with yourself? You've been exposed online. Why not just die? Although I diverted the public's attention to me, your reputation is ruined for good." Seeing her grow more outrageous, I grabbed Casey by the throat. "If you dare insult my fiancé again, do you believe I'll kill you? The one who should die is you. You drove Aunt Emma to her death in the name of love. You've trampled on my dignity for 10 years, and now you want to hurt Zoe? Why don't you just die? Only with your death will this all end." My eyes burned with rage, my grip on Casey's throat tightened. Her eyes widened in terror, pupils dilating. She kept pleading, Please let me go." My rationality flickered momentarily, but I didn't want to let Casey off easily. At this moment, Zoe in tears rushed over and pried my hands away. "Jamie, let her go. It's not worth it for someone like her. I know she hurt you, hurt everyone. I also know you want to stand up for me, but I'm not angry. It's unnecessary. The doctor told me this morning that my depression is improving. Our life is getting better. There's really no need to ruin our good days because of this malicious woman." Zoe's words, uttered one by one, moved me deeply. Seeing her cry made me cry too. Slowly, I loosened my grip, and Casey took the opportunity to break free from my hold. She clutched her neck, covered in marks, looking at me with lingering fear, coughing uncontrollably. If you ever think of harming Zoe again, remember how many lives you have. I looked at her with cold eyes, my tone devoid of any warmth. I won't. I won't. For the first time, Casey conceded, scurried out of my house in disgrace. I closed the door, holding Zoe in my arms, trying to calm my emotions. It's okay now, it's all over. I stroked Zoe's head gently, comforting her. Zoe gradually stopped crying and looked up at me with deep affection. Jamie, what others say doesn't really matter. What matters is how you see me. Do you really think I'm as dirty as Casey says? Her eyes were filled with hope, as if she would break if I didn't believe her. I quickly reassured her. How could I believe Casey? You're my fiancé. I trust you're not like that. Hearing this, Zoe's face immediately lit up with joy. I knew you would believe me. Just know. You fought for me. I believe you love me, perhaps even pity me. But sometimes, trust between lovers is more important than love itself. I nodded, trying to understand Zoe's words. Although I couldn't fully grasp what Zoe had gone through over the past decade, I had always felt a sense of trust in her. We were high school classmates. After we were separated into different classes in our sophomore year, she was no longer in my class, but I still heard about her occasionally, like how she always topped the school exams and won various competition prizes. The most memorable thing was hearing the boys talk about her every month, saying she was voted the school beauty again. I often teased those bored boys, asking why they wasted time voting every month if she was always the winner. The boys would call me a bookworm, saying I didn't understand the fun of rating pretty girls. Many boys even planned to pursue her. Without exception, they all failed. Everyone said she was cold and hard to get, seemingly only interested in studying. Some even said she had a crush on someone, but no one knew who it was. I was never interested in such gossip, but hearing about her repeatedly formed an impression in my mind. A beautiful girl who wasn't interested in dating, only in studying. Maybe she had a crush, but she hid it well. Such a girl left a positive impression. How could she be associated with those scandals? I absolutely didn't believe it. Jamie, aren't you curious why I have depression? Zoe looked at me with wide eyes full of trust. I knew she was about to share her innermost thoughts. I'm curious, but if you don't want to talk about it, I won't force you. It's your personal privacy. Of course, if you're willing to share, I'd be happy to listen. I perked up my ears, not wanting to miss a word that could help me understand her better. Zoe sighed and began to recount the past. It turns out I developed depression after starting high school. I had good grades, was very pretty, and was an upright person. While my excellent and bright personality made me popular, it also sparked jealousy among some girls. Those jealous girls targeted me, spreading various rumors to slander me, using all means necessary. Gradually, even the classmates who had a good impression of me started believing the rumors and began to ostracize me. This isolation eventually turned into blatant bullying. Whenever I was alone, I would either encounter boys who purposely disgusted me or be tortured by jealous girls. Over time, I became afraid to walk alone at night. One time, after an evening self-study session, I missed the time to go home with my friends. Left alone, I was blocked on my way home. A group of girls surrounded me, saying extremely nasty things. Some even started to tear at my clothes, taking humiliating photos of me and sharing them for fun. That night, Jamie happened to pass by and stopped those girls, threatening to call the police if they didn't delete the photos in front of us. Not wanting any trouble, they reluctantly deleted them, the photos, and left. For my safety, Jamie offered to walk me home. It turned out my house was quite close to his, just 2 streets away. After that, walking me home became a habit for him. For Jamie, it was just something he did on the way, but for me, these actions meant the world. They even gave me the courage to live. Do you know, before you saved me, I had been bullied by those classmates for nearly a year? I developed severe depression. I wanted to end my life to escape the pain. It was your help that gave me the courage to keep living. I hugged Zoe tightly, gently pinching her cheek with my fingers. Silly girl, it was just a small act of kindness. I didn't expect it to help you so much. Zoe held my hand tightly and continued. Later, you walked me home every day until we graduated from high school. Do you know those were the happiest days of my life? Walking with you for 10 minutes each day was the closest I got to you. Hearing this, I suddenly realized. So you liked me since high school? People said you had a crush, and that person was me? Zoe nodded shyly. Yes, ever since you helped me, we had more opportunities to interact. I gradually discovered your many virtues and fell deeply in love with you. She lowered her head again, like a shy schoolgirl experiencing her first crush. I found her so adorable that I couldn't help but ruffle her hair. You liked me? Why didn't you tell me back then? I wasn't dating Casey yet. Mentioning Casey's name made Zoe flinch instinctively, fear evident in her eyes. So I began to make bold guesses. Did Casey deliberately say I was hers to keep you away from me? Zoe nodded. You were often with her, living at her house, and you weren't related by blood, so I thought you always liked her. When you two started dating, I was even more convinced you loved her. Therefore, my feelings for you remained a secret. I looked at Zoe in shock, realizing I had missed out on years of happiness. Before dating Casey, I did have a good impression of her. Later, when Zoe gradually distanced herself, Casey proposed we date, and I decided to cherish the one in front of me. I speculated. Did Casey find out about your secret crush on me? Is that why she targeted you? Zoe's fearful expression returned, indicating that even mentioning Casey's name triggered a reaction. So I made another bold assumption. She didn't just target you. She even bullied you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so afraid of her. Part of your depression must have stemmed from her long-term torment. Zoe's body trembled as she started crying. I'm sorry. I should have been braver, but I couldn't help being scared. The incident you saved me from was actually orchestrated by her and a group of people to harm me. She's terrifying, and I've never been able to move past it. I hugged Zoe, patting her back and comforting her. Don't worry. Bad people will get their comeuppance. Justice will prevail. This was not just to comfort Zoe but also a promise to her. A decade-long psychological shadow probably needed some measure of justice. Healing I hired the best lawyer at great expense to take Casey and her junior to court for slandering us during this period. I used a private investigator to uncover other harmful schemes they had been involved in. They even conspired to defraud a cancer patient out of nearly $1 million, which could lead to a prison sentence. I handed the evidence to the police and the judge. Later, Casey and her junior were sentenced to 3 years in prison. 3 years, not too short, not too long. Enough for them to learn a lesson. Since Casey was imprisoned, our lives had become much more peaceful. Zoe's mental health also improved significantly. We had a wedding, inviting all our friends and family. 3 months after the wedding, Zoe became pregnant with our baby. I touched her belly and vowed to her, I will take good care of this child and not let them suffer as we did. Zoe smiled blissfully. With you by my side, I feel like I'm tasting sweetness every day. I smiled too. We are not only each other's sugar but also each other's medicine, healing one another.